Guys, welcome to the first night session of Bootcamp 2019. We have literally been looking forward to tonight since last year's Bootcamp ended. And whether that's the same for you or you found out about Bootcamp in the past week, I am so glad that you're here. I know I haven't met every single one of you yet. I would love to over the course of this week. Seriously, if I pass you in the cafeteria or free time or in the hallway or whatever, just introduce yourself. I promise you I am more awkward than you are. A lot of y'all already know that's true. Like, so for real, just say hi. I'd love to get to know you. But what I can assume about every single one of you in the room is that you have all had options or ways to spend your summer, and yet you chose to spend part of it here with us. And that means the freaking world to me. So here's what we're going to do in this part of each night session each week. We're going to go through a 4-part conversation. We call it a series. And this series this year is called Irresistible. And it is the most excited I have ever been for a bootcamp series because it's one that is so personal to me. And these conversations have impacted my life in such a big way. And I hope that they're helpful to you as well. For me, I mentioned earlier that I didn't grow up in church. When I did go to church, it was on Christmas and Easter pretty much. It was just for the big holidays. And we went to this very traditional church in Cleveland, Ohio. And services were about 2 or 3 hours long. I had to wear a tie every week. I don't know if there was AC in this building. The guys on the stage, the altar, they would sing like half the sermon. You definitely don't want me to try to do that. Some of it was in a different language. I mean, it was brutal, and you guys missed out for sure. But this was the kind of like experience I grew up in, and because of that, I would describe church for me growing up. I would have either said boring or irrelevant. I would have said boring, probably younger. You know, I would have said boring younger. I think the average guy on staff, the average priest was, I don't know, like 90 to 150 years old, somewhere in that kind of range. And I would literally, like, pretend to sleep through my alarm. Like, that's how much I hated going. I would literally lay there, and the thing would go, and I would lay there so that when my mom would come in, she would see I'm not ready to go, and I could go golfing with my dad instead. Like, that's how much I didn't want to go when I was younger. When I was older, I think I just would have said, like, this word irrelevant. You know, just like when I got to middle school and high school and I moved to Texas, it was just more like not that big of a deal to me. I might have said I was a Christian because I was an American, but it wasn't something significant. It wasn't something I wanted to be a part of. It's like, I mean, good for like Christians, good for church people. I'm glad that they have that. I'm busy enough doing the high school thing. Emily kept inviting me to Inside Out. This was us in high school. Emily is who I mentioned earlier, now my wife. And so you never know who invited you to camp or who's sitting around me right now and all that kind of stuff. But she invited me, and I was like, I don't want to like go because I've got baseball and I've got school and friends, and her and I were starting this relationship. I'm trying to get to the UT. I'm like, I don't have time for that. And when she invited me, I just came in very skeptical. And to some degree, I've just always kind of been this way. I don't know if you would say you're skeptical as well. I'm just curious, and I question everything. I think it was probably really hard to parent me. Like, for example, when I was 7 or 8, I don't know, whenever you start losing teeth, whenever you start getting new holes in your head, I lost a molar, like in the back of my mouth that you couldn't really see. And I started to get skeptical about the whole tooth fairy thing. And so I went one night and I put this molar underneath my pillow, but I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents because I was like, there's this flying fairy that like takes your decaying bones and pays you cash for them, but doesn't pay all my friends equally. Some were getting like $20, and I'm like, what is that? And so I didn't really understand. So I put my tooth under the pillow, and then a week later I come downstairs. I don't say anything. I just walk into the kitchen holding the tooth, a little sassy 7-year-old version of myself. And I just look at my mom. She's like, oh my gosh, did you lose a tooth? And I'm like, yep, a week ago. And I don't know if I can trust you ever again. Like, that was, you know, kind of the conversation. I mean, coming into church, I was 0 for 3 on the big kind of fairy tale things of my childhood, right? Like, the tooth fairy hadn't worked out. The Easter bunny is really weird. That's like a mutant bunny that lays eggs. But that's what chickens do. But we're just somehow okay with that. And Santa, I mean, I still think I need to be in counseling for that. I don't know how many like middle-aged guys' laps I sat on, and my mom took a picture of that. Like, that was cute. I have a vivid memory in Ohio. We went to this like really big mall, and the Santa there, I could tell his beard was real. It wasn't like a fake one; it was a real one. And I remember walking away. We were on like the escalator. I was like, Mom, I think that might have been the guy. And she looked back at me like right in my eyes and said, I think he was too. And I'm like, my whole childhood is lies. Like, I just remember those moments, and I have all those going. Probably the only silver lining for me coming into church is I have been to Orlando. I have been to Universal Studios, and I have walked into Hogwarts. I know that Hogwarts is real, but everything else just didn't really work out. And so I came in with a lot of questions. I think as a result for me, church, it was just very resistible. It was just like I resisted it. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be part. Like, don't invite me to that thing. Don't invite me to your camp. Like, I'm happy for you, but it's just not my thing. What's crazy is I finally said yes. Finally came to an inside out, our high school environment. And I was able to ask honest questions with someone who honestly cared about me. My small group leader's name was Jeff, and he took my questions seriously. And I could tell that he cared not just about my questions, but about me. And I was amazed. When I say honest questions, I don't mean like not the emotional, sarcastic ones, like, well, what about this and how about that? I'm just trying to argue. When I asked real questions, I was blown away by how many answers there were, how real these answers were, how much thought had been put into this. And for me, I don't know how, but it happened quickly. Over the course of a summer, over the course of a boot camp at Camp 75, church went from very, very resistible for me to very irresistible. And what's fascinating is as I've learned more about my faith, as I've learned more about Christianity, that's how the thing started. People who weren't Christians would say that movement is irresistible because it went from this small little group, this small little Jewish cult led by a carpenter turned Jewish religious leader, turned a rabbi named Jesus. And within 300 years, with no Twitter for anything to go viral, the thing had become the official faith, the official religion of the Roman Empire, which was the most powerful empire on the planet. So what I want to know is why did people think it was irresistible? Why did people want to be around it? Even if they didn't know or get everything or believe it, they're like, I want to hang out with those people, I want to be friends with them, I want to date them, I want to marry them. Why do people have that feeling about Christians? What did they know that we don't? What did they see? What did they experience? Why did we reset our calendar after this Jesus guy? This is what I want to talk about in our series. And tonight, I want to start with point one, which for me is why I'm so excited about tonight, because we've never had this conversation at a boot camp, which is crazy to me. I mentioned earlier, this is my 10th boot camp experience, and we've never started here, which is crazy because I don't assume what you guys think or what you guys believe about this next question, but it's a question that if we don't have an answer to this first question, we can't really talk about anything else. And so the starting point, the natural starting point, is how can we be confident that God even exists? I don't assume where anybody is at with that in the room that you came in here with. How can we be confident? Not even the God of Jesus, just that any God exists. Does that even make sense? We have to start here where nothing is irresistible. But to start, I want to debunk a very kind of common myth to get our conversation going. And that common myth is that smart people have disproved God and simple people, we'll just use that word, are still holding on. That's just not true. Every generation that's ever lived has thought they're the smartest generation that's ever lived and thought we don't need this God thing, but then he just keeps popping up. There are brilliant people on both sides of the equation. People way smarter than me, and so we have to just pause and say, where does the evidence point? For example, one of the really brilliant atheists, I actually got to see him in person in college speak. His name is Richard Dawkins, and he has this cool British accent. I won't try and impersonate it. For whatever reason, every time I try to do any accent, it turns out like an Indian accent, and I don't know why that is. So I won't try, but he has this really cool accent, and everybody in the crowd just like loves him, and they were fired up, and it was so cool. And I got to see him in person. He wrote a New York Times best-selling book called The God Delusion. Another guy's name is Sam Harris, and he is a psychologist and a neurologist, and he's very easy to listen to. He's like very smooth, and he's got all these great points, and you just want to listen to him, and he's written a bunch of books as well. And then you look at the other side of the equation, and I mean, even the historical list, and there's a lot of people on the other team as well. I mean, I think it's awesome to have Charles Darwin when you're like, hey, he's the father of evolution. That doesn't mean he thought that meant there was no God. He was just like, hey, maybe this is how he did it. This is some of the first famous female physicists that believed in God. Albert Einstein, I think it's always good to have on your team. If we're doing a draft, we'd probably pick him near the top. Like, that would be good to have. Stephen Hawking went back and forth his whole life. Francis Collins is a modern version, a modern guy. He actually, this is a picture of Francis Collins right here. He led something recently called the Human Genome Project, which sequenced human DNA. And if you have no idea what that is, just know it's like a very expensive science, fair project that went really well. And this guy is a Christian. He's brilliant. I came across one article that said 8 out of the 10 smartest people alive via IQ tests. 8 of the smartest 10 people on the planet believe that there is a God. Not necessarily the God of Jesus, but just believe that there is a God. So there's smart people on both sides. I just think in the room, we have to acknowledge we probably have 3 groups of people. If you're in here, some of you came in and you say, I already believe in God. Maybe you're like, I don't even know why this conversation is important for me because I believe that. I actually think it could be most important for you. Because Peter, one of Jesus' closest friends, he wrote this in the New Testament. He said, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. If your faith is a couple hard questions away from completely collapsing, it's not a strong faith to begin with. And if you're insecure about your faith, then we get defensive and nasty and insecure and we argue, and that's not productive for anybody. He says these conversations should always be open-minded, they should be gentle and respectful. So it's incredibly important for us who believe in God. If you're in the room, there might be a second group of you in here that you would be agnostic. Maybe you don't even know that's what you are, but that just means I don't really know, I don't really care, I don't know that you can know. It doesn't feel like a big deal. And the third category would be atheist. I don't think there is a God. And I shouldn't have to disprove him. I don't have to disprove unicorns. I just don't think that there is a God. I think if you're in one of these 2 categories, I hope that tonight's conversation is just helpful for you to understand what your friends in the room think. Ideally, this should just be a productive, respectful conversation that unifies us and gets us on the same page and helps us understand one another. If I was going to ask that question, if you said, how can you even know, is there anything to this whole thing that there might be a God? I would say, well, it depends on, what category we're talking about. There's some big categories that we can address the question from. These would be some of them. Your experiences. Some people say they believe in God because of experiences they've had. Scientific reasons. Is it testable? Is it repeatable? Philosophical reasons, meaning does it even make any sense? Historical reason. Is there anything God has done in history? There's lots of things that we can approach. Tonight, we're not going to talk about all of these. I do want to acknowledge that a lot of Christians become Christians because of an experience that they have. And I just want to say that if you are an atheist in the room, I just want to be honest and say yes. A lot of times it's not that we checked all the boxes and we did all the research. A lot of times it's something really difficult happened in our life. Something really unexpected happened, and we started asking questions that we've never asked before. And we started to believe in God as a result. That happens. Sometimes there's somebody who's really influential in our life that we know cares about us, who is a Christian, and we become a Christian as a result. Sometimes we go to an experience like transit, our middle school environment, or inside out our high school environment, or boot camp like this, and we use phrases like, something clicked for me there. Something was different. I've just never thought about that before. I've never felt that way before. I've never experienced that before. And if God is real, even if you have to pretend, well, that kind of makes sense. It makes sense that you might experience him. Now, if he's not and we're making it all up, then you might just kind of think we're psychotic, and I totally understand that. But I just wanted to be real to say, yes, a lot of people do become Christians that way. But I want to focus on tonight these middle 2 categories. Basically, our conversation is I want to talk about 3 things here, and that's kind of a wrap. But I do want to pause before I jump into it, and I just want to say that this could very well be one of the most important conversations in your life. Regardless of your story, this is one of the most important questions that you could ever ask. Because if there is no God, that means huge things for how you live your life and what you chase and what your goals are. And if there is a God, that means huge things for how you live your life and what your goals are. This is not a mutual thing. I think it's one of the most important questions you can ask. This is way bigger than just like a toss-up, like I don't know who's the greatest of all time, LeBron or MJ. Like it's clearly LeBron, but it's not what we're talking about tonight. This is like, it's not like, hey, what's better, McDonald's or Whataburger? It's still Whataburger, but McDonald's is like making a comeback. I don't know if y'all feel this at all. Unpopular opinion, it's like on the rise. This is bigger than that, right? I think on a serious note, I think this is bigger than what college you decide to go to. I think this is bigger than if you decide you want to get married someday or if you want to have kids someday. I think this is that type of question, whichever side you land on. And here's the thing, I I'm not going to hold back tonight. Like, if I use a big word or a confusing word, I'm going to try and make it simple. But some of you are months away from college. All of you are within about 6 or 7 years of it. And so I don't want to give you a little kid answer to a big question, okay? I'm going to be as real as I can. You guys are smart and you will hang, and I'm not believing you guys, but I'm going to try to do my best to say, hey, I'm going to go full on with what I think some of those reasons are. If we were to start in that first category we talked about, the scientific one of the huge starting points almost anybody would start with is to say there is a huge problem when you think about if there's no God, the physical reality of the world we live in. Another way to say this is, why is there anything instead of nothing? Okay? Why is there anything? Where did this all come from? Like, hold up your left hand and squeeze it with your right hand and be like, why is there anything? It's that question that kind of makes your head hurt, right? You're like, where did all this come from? Where did the earth come from? Okay, what was before the earth, like our solar system? Okay, well, where did the solar system come from? Okay, the Big Bang. What was the Big Bang? Where did that matter come from? It's that thing that kind of frustrates you. And if there is no God, this question presents a huge, huge problem. This is not a small deal. You see, what's natural is that everything in nature has a beginning and an end. Your day has a beginning and an end. The conversation has a beginning and an end. The meal has a beginning and an end. Every plant, every animal life cycle, your life has a beginning and an end. Kevin Durant's Achilles had a beginning and it had an end this past week. Watch it one more time just for dramatic effect. It is heartbreaking. It is so sad. I'm not sad that the Warriors didn't get another ring, but I am sad to see that. Everything in nature has a beginning and an end. You know, it's supernatural. What is above nature, what is not natural. What is supernatural does not have to follow the laws of nature. So your argument might be, well, if you think it's God, then who created God? I'm like, well, hey, I'm okay with supernatural stuff because I believe in God. I don't believe God had a beginning. I believe he's always been. He created the laws of nature. He can be outside of time if he wants to be. He's God, but I'm saying I'm cool with supernatural stuff. If we're not okay with supernatural stuff, then we have a really big problem. Because if there is no God, hang with me, I know you guys, this will make sense. If there's no God, then you have to answer, well, what was before the Big Bang? What created all of that? And we have to keep asking that question over and over and over again. And we have no answer for it. Or you can say, well, the universe has just always been here. You actually just made a supernatural argument. You and I would both be making a supernatural argument. So it's a huge, huge problem. Here's the second one I want to talk about. The origin of life, or you could say, how did life begin? Now, if you guys will let me for like the next 3 minutes, I'm just going to go super nerd mode with this. I love this. It's okay if you don't. I totally get it. I'm going to try and make it as understandable as possible. But this, to me, is maybe the most interesting one, personally. This is not like, why is there an earth? This is now like, why is anything alive? How did that start? Okay? So follow me with this for a second. This right here, this little guy, is a protein molecule. I didn't give him a name. I don't know if one of you guys want to give him a name. It's really, really small. Matt? Seriously, Matt? That is small. We'll go with that. We'll go with Matt. That's the little guy. It's really small. That's the coolest guy in the world for all the short kids who throw at him, by the way. He's such a stud. Anyway, so this is a protein molecule. Really, really tiny. All right? You need a whole bunch of these. You need 30 of these to make a cell. Once you have a cell, now you can say, hey, that's alive, that's living, okay? You need 30 of these. I know it's summer, I know you don't want to be in biology right now, but just hang with me. This is a protein molecule. For a protein molecule to form, I heard one researcher say this. He said, pretend that the ocean was full, completely full, nothing else but amino acids. Now that's what makes a protein molecule up, okay? So he said, pretend it's just full of it. Now this is completely unrealistic, but he said, hey, beginning of the earth, pretend it's just full of those. And pretend somehow, magically, the sun's radiation is blocked, so it can't destroy the cell, it can't destroy the protein molecule. He said, hey, pretend it's perfect. In that perfect environment, the odds of just one protein molecule, that little guy, little Matt, forming by chance, by random, he said is 1 in 10 to the 164th power. Now, because we can't really understand that, we don't completely fall out of our chair and all that kind of stuff, this is what that looks like in zeros. So this is 1 in this number. This is 1 in 100 trillion, 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 trillion. It is 13 trillions. You are trillions of times more likely to win the lottery than for this to happen by random, okay? But you would say, well, it did. We're here. I understand that. I get that. But remember, that's just the odds of 1. You need 30 of them, okay? And not 30 like one formed in Africa and one in North America and one in Hawaii. You need 30 at the same place at the same time. Not a million years apart, not a week apart, not a day apart, at the same time. And you need them to all find each other. And if they can find each other, then you've got a cell. Then you've got the simplest form of life that we know. But hey, if you've got this, it's got to eat something. So it doesn't die right away, even though there's nothing else living. And you know what else it has to do right away, right? It has to be able to reproduce itself. We've got to have 2, and then 4, and then 8, so it's not just gone and this crazy miracle happened and then it's gone in a minute. See guys, it's not just unlikely. It is impossible, okay? This isn't like, are we going to find the cure for cancer someday? I think absolutely, I think one of you guys will do it. This is in a completely different category for that. And no matter how much time or space you have, it doesn't make the impossible possible. I hear people say, but the universe is so big, and eventually if you went far enough, and it's like, no, that doesn't make sense. It's not like if eventually you went far enough, you would find Harry and Dumbledore, right? That's not how that works. It is impossible. That's the second big problem. The third one is this. I'll go real quick through this one. The fancy name for it is cosmological argument. This simpler is just space. It's like, hey, let's just look at space around us. This is our galaxy. This is not the whole universe. This is just our galaxy, okay? But there are so many things, I don't want to bore you guys with it, but there are so many things to make our universe possible. It is absolutely extraordinary. If gravity was any different, we would all explode, we would become liquid, we would become gas. If gravity was not a little different, but any different. If the rate of expansion of the universe were any different, so that Big Bang happens, and it was any faster, the sun would be way too far away, we'd never get heat from it. If it was any slower, we would all just collapse in and explode. But like I said, I don't want to bore you, I just want to give you this one illustration with it, okay? Think about if we were to travel here. Has anybody ever gone here on like a spring break or summer vacation or anything? Yeah, this is Mars, okay? So this is Mars, so probably not. Well, let's say Elon Musk figures it out, right? Let's say he figures it out and we're on Mars and we're vacationing and we're walking around on the Earth, or it's not the Earth, we're walking on the Mars. It's on Mars and we're walking around and we're looking and we're like, hey, there's a rock, there's a rock, there's a rock, there's a rock. There's a dictionary, okay? There's a dictionary, we just found one on the ground, okay? But our assumption is, well, nobody could have made that. So it must be that a printer exploded and all of the ink landed on these pages in such a way that now there's order and there's page numbers and there's a table of contents and there's sentences and ideas and there's a cover and it makes sense. That's what must have happened. A printer must have exploded and the ink must have fallen down, right? I saw one researcher, he said, this idea is trillions of times more likely that a printer would explode and it would land and just happens to be a dictionary than you would have a ball of matter explode into the universe that we live in today and we experience. Here's a couple of quotes from some guys way smarter than me, and then we'll be done with the science one. This guy is a British astrophysicist. His name's Paul Davies, and he said, there is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design, a creator, intelligence to him is overwhelming. This next one is Alan Sandage, and he said, I find it quite improbable that such order came out of chaos. There has to be some organizing principle. God to me is a mystery. What is the explanation for the miracle of existence? Why there is something instead of nothing? 2 more. We'll wrap these up. From the perspective of the latest physical theories, look how far this guy goes. Christianity is not a mere religion, but an experimentally testable science. This is how obvious it is to this guy. Now again, just one opinion. Does this prove God? No, absolutely not, but it's just something to think about. Here's the last one. This is a Nobel Prize winner. It seems to me that when confronted with the marvels of life in the universe, one must ask why and not just how. The only possible answers are religious. I find a need for God in the universe and in my own life. Do these things prove God? No, they don't. But it's something to think about, something to add to the conversation. And if you're in that first category of people who say, I do believe in God, we don't have to be afraid of these kinds of conversations. In fact, we're encouraged to be a part of these conversations. Paul in Romans, he writes this. He says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." He said, it is the world around us that should say, obviously, somebody created all this. That's what Paul would say. David writes it this way in Psalms. He says, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. The more we learn about it, the more confident we should be that there's a God, not the other way around. We don't have to run away from this stuff. This is extraordinary. So, that's one category. That's a science category. The philosophical one, I want to be a lot quicker through for the sake of time, but this is kind of the, does this even make sense when you just think about it and apply some logic to it? The philosophical category, the big one that people will always argue for is this, and this is a really big one. Like, tons of people argue for this. They say, hey, you run into a really big problem if there is no God with good and evil morality. Okay? Here's what this means. If there is no God, good and evil, they don't actually exist. Good and bad don't actually exist. That's just something we've made up. Because we're all just big rocks that can make noise. Like, we're just matter. We are just cells. We're just the result of this explosion, and we're still falling ink. But good and bad, that's not real. Okay, think about it this way. You think about the animal kingdom. You don't call it murder when an animal eats another animal. That's just a stronger animal doing what he wants with a weaker animal. That's just survival of the fittest. I don't like saying it this way, but the implications of this are really big, okay? If there is no God, there's no logical reason to care for people who can't care for themselves. There's not. There's emotional reasons, but there's no logical reason to care for somebody who can't care for themselves, who is sick, who is poor, who is elderly, because we're just matter. We're just matter. It's an inconvenience, you just leave it behind like the animal kingdom does. Our value, if there is no God. Guys, think about this. We are on this tiny little speck in an enormous universe. It's about 14 billion years old. If we're lucky, we'll live 70 or 80 years. The universe will never know we were here. Mars will never know we were here. The sun will someday just absorb us anyways. We have so little value. We're smaller than a grain of sand. We're smaller than an ant in the universe. I can't even put in words how little value we have in a world where there is no God, which means in terms of our meaning, it's just all random. This is just all the way it fell. There is no why behind it. Does that mean that God is real? Well, no. But you have to think about this. You have to think about a world with no God. Now, as I go through this, I would imagine some of you push back in your head. I think it's interesting that you even push back. I think why can't we just accept that we have no value? You're right. I got no meaning. Life sucks. I have no value. Good and bad. We just made it up. I get it. Some cultures love their neighbor. Some cultures eat their neighbor. It's really whatever you want to do. Like, why aren't we just okay with that? Because there's something inside every single one of you, even though I haven't met all of you yet, that says that just doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel true. I would put it this way. Just think about this kind of illustration or story. Last year, I ran in my first race, which was the Capital 10K. And this is my buddy Adam. He's one of my groomsmen. And he was one of the groomsmen at my wedding. And there's 23,000 people in this race. Adam got second. He ran a 5:15 mile for 6 miles. That is stupid. Okay, that is stupid. If you're wondering, I did not finish ahead of him. I did finish behind him by a few thousand people. So, but I took a picture with him afterwards because it made me feel cool. And I went through the finish line, and I was tired, and I was hungry, and I was thirsty. And when I crossed the finish line, there was this huge table of water cups, and I basically just fell into it and jumped into it. And I was just so tired at the end of this. But what's interesting is when my body is tired, well, that's because there's a solution to that. Like, there's something I can do. I can go sleep. I can go to bed, and I did for a long time. I was very exhausted that day. When I'm thirsty, I don't know if you've ever been outside in 100 degrees and you're tired and you're exhausted, and how good a cold Gatorade feels on that day. It's just extraordinary, right? There is something when you are thirsty, when your body's saying, hey, I'm thirsty, there's a solution to that. When you're hungry, my body was saying, hey, you just burned a whole bunch of calories, you're exhausted. There are things you can eat to refuel your body. When something inside of you says, hey, your life does have value, it does have meaning, it does have purpose, and so does everybody around you. Because human beings from the beginning of time have been trying to figure out what their purpose is. Why? Do deer do that? Do ants do that? I don't know. Why have humans from the beginning of time been trying to figure out why we're here? I think, personally, just my opinion, I think we should think about what is the solution to that. What is the thing inside of me that says, no, there are good and bad things in the world. No, like, my life does have meaning. I'm searching for purpose. I have dreams. My friends matter. My family matters. What is that thing inside of us that tells us that those things matter? I think it has to do with something bigger than us. Because if there's something bigger than us, going back to our list, that changes everything about this list. Think about it this way. I'll tell this last story and then we'll wrap our time. I said I got to see Dawkins speak when I was in college, when I was a sophomore. It was so cool for me. I got to sit in the back of the room, and I was excited because I had just seen the world like he did, pretty recently. And so I was excited to listen to him and his thoughts, and he was, very sarcastic, and he did mock prayers and mock Bible stories and all this stuff. And the crowd was like rowdy, it's not what you would expect. They were loud and clapping and cheering and laughing and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting through it all and I'm enjoying it, I'm loving listening to him. And at the end of his whole presentation, they do a Q&A session. There's about 6 or 7 people that walk up and ask a question. The very last question of the night, again, 5,000 people in this room, and it's super loud and energetic. This girl walks up, and she says something very respectful. I don't know exactly what it was. Something like, Mr. Dawkins, thank you so much for coming to our campus. I've read all of your books. I'm so influenced by you. I love everything you said tonight. I really appreciate you being here and visiting our campus. I just wanted to ask. I feel like I'm so close to walking away from my faith. I feel like I'm right there. I feel like I'm almost 100% all in. But Mr. Dawkins, I feel like if I did that honestly, if I did that intellectually, if I went 100%, I feel like I have no choice but to end my life in the moment I believe that, because of the weight of meaninglessness in my life. 5,000 people, rowdy the whole night. You could have heard a pin drop. The way Dawkins responded was awkward. He went back and forth for about 15 seconds. It was uncomfortable. And he paced on the stage and he said, well, gosh, I don't know. When you think about it that way, when you put it that way, I guess it's beautiful that you have a brain that can comprehend that. And the night ended. Silence. He just confirmed to all of his fans, 5,000 people in the room, yes. If you buy into everything I just said, you're right. I don't know how you can say your life has any meaning. But if God is real, and you go back to our list, when it comes to morality, if God is perfect, and God is good, and we have a standard of good, so therefore we know what that is, and you walk through the remains of a concentration camp from World War II where people were burned in ovens, you say, this is evil, it is real, this is not something I've made up, this should not happen. You see a soldier fighting for his country and his family, and you say, there is good in the world. Those things are not something we've just made up. You think about value. It is hard for me to put into words your level of worth and value if God is real. If God is real, and He made you, He thought of you, He created you, He sent His Son into the world to be with us, to be one of us, to talk to us, communicate with us, hold us, hug us, love us, die for us, forgive us, it makes you far and away, not even close to anything else, the most valuable thing in all of creation. Which means your life has extraordinary meaning and extraordinary purpose. Because the God of the universe says you matter. He says, I have plans for you. He says, you're my son, you're my daughter, you're the only thing in all of this incredible creation made in my image. You see why I said it's such a huge question for us to know? where we stand because of what hangs in the balance. So my question for every single one of us is, do you know the reason for your hope? If you hope that he's real, do you know why? If you hope that he's not, do you know why? And if you hope it doesn't matter, do you know why? Because I personally think that the reason for our hope could be the very beginning of something absolutely irresistible. What I'd like to do is I'd like to pray for our time tonight. This is our first time praying together at Bootcamp. If you've never done that before, praying is just the word we use for talking to God. We think if he is real, that he can hear us and we get to have conversations with him because he wants a relationship with us. And so if you want to just close your eyes, bow your head, I'm going to pray. You can pray with me or you can just listen to either one of those. It's fine, but it's just how we're going to close our time tonight. Heavenly Father, God, if you are real, if I'm not just talking to myself up here on the stage right now, and God, you hear every single word I'm saying. You hear every single heart and thought in this room. God, if you are real, I don't know how we do anything but just sit here in incredible awe and gratitude of you, that you love us, that you created us, that you have these incredible plans for us. God, wherever we are in the room with that, I know you're not disappointed in us. I know you're not angry with us. You're not pushing anything on us. You just want us to have gentle and respectful conversations. So God, would you allow us as we begin these conversations with each other to just be real, to just be authentic with one another, to not force things, to not just say what we think what people want to hear, God, but would you allow us to just have the strength to be honest and authentic with one another. God, we love you. We're in awe of you. We need you. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.